Each stroke of the brush, each word on a page, each breath leading to the silhouette of a dance or a song. This is artistry in every form, and for more than 5 decades, it has found a home. The National Arts Festival was established in 1974 as a project of the 1820 Settlers Foundation and has since grown into one of Africa's largest festivals. Throughout its history, the festival has remained open to everyone of all artistry without censoring or restrictions. Tonight, we're exploring the rich and abundant culture of this festival and the very important people that uphold its name behind the curtains. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk. I'm your host, Owami K.
And I am Unati Sandi, also known as Unsta the Star, Unotiboy Gamakulu no Damkulu, and I am the second half of this beautiful pair. Palesa Kadi, born in Red Location, Port Elizabeth, South Africa, is a governance, communications and strategy executive with over 20 years of experience across government, regulatory bodies, heritage, tourism, broadcasting, and public administration. She has held numerous ministerial and board appointments, including serving as a board member of the SABC, Cricket South Africa, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, and the National Heritage Council, where she has chaired several audit, risk, governance and communications committees.
Now, academically, she is a PhD candidate in development studies at the University of Pretoria with postgraduate qualifications in political studies, economics and management. Her career includes executive leadership roles at the National Heritage Council, ICASA, the Film and Publication Board, the National Department of Tourism, the Eastern Cape Department of Economic Affairs and Tourism, and the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. And we here at Let's Talk are so fortunate to be able to be in the presence of a true veteran and speak to her today. Hi, Palesa, and welcome to Let's Talk.
Thank you, Owami and Unati.
Thank you so much for coming, right? You've had so much experience and you are a veteran in the truest sense in your field, right? But beyond that, how would you say people describe who Palesa Kadi is?
I'm a creative thinker, a strategist in particular, a futures person, planning scenarios, wanting to see how we get to the future and let the future come closer, having worked on different projects, having been trained in Oxford on scenario planning. I think that opened my understanding of how systems are and how the world can change without us imagining it.
You were born and bred right here in the Eastern Cape in the Red Location. Can you please kindly take us through your childhood and what are some of the things and experiences that shaped what you stand for today?
That shaped me a great deal, thanks, Unsta. In the 80s, my primary school was burnt down on my first day of attending school, something I was really looking forward to. I was 4 years. I started school very early. That was Jarvis Kamlana Primary School in New Brighton at Gqeberha. From there, I had this image that people burnt the school. And that was also during apartheid, right at the prime of transgressions and human rights issues. Red Location, as it is known, was also a creative space. It had many productions coming through. It's also noted in many productions and theatre pieces, including Athol Fugard's work. They will talk about sports people, taverns, and all the shenanigans that happened in any space where people live, but also the greatness of the people that come from that space, irrespective of how it was being built from corrugated iron material from world wars and where it is now, and people like us come from that space, including doctors and lawyers that you might know of.
So you said that your school was burned down when you were just 4 years old, just starting out, right? And I can imagine that sort of had an impact on the way that you view education. Despite the school burning down, you continued to create such an amazing CV in terms of academics. Like, I feel like you're always studying, you're currently pursuing your doctoral studies, right? Would you say that there was someone who you looked up to educationally who encouraged you to sort of continue pursuing your education?
Yes, both my parents. My mother was a teacher for 40 years, a maths and science teacher, and my dad continued with his studies. In the olden days, people will stop working. He had a first grade, first class, standard 6 pass, and had to go and work so that he can take his siblings to school. So, and pursued when I was doing, is it grade 4, standard 2? Then he also pursued his high school up to metric as well. So whilst everyone is at home was always reading something, but the newspaper was our daily read. So I grew up wanting to read and wanting to know what's happening around me. And that's where the interest to read, but also write and do things happened. And it also showed me how the world thinks and which other avenues, including my love for African literature and writers as well.
Over the years, you've been hands-on rather within the sector of the arts, sports, and culture. In 2010, you were the FIFA World Cup director in the Eastern Cape, and you were the National Heritage Council Board member. And now you are the CEO of the National Arts Festival. What is the role that sports, arts, and culture plays within in shaping our communities?
It's a sense of discipline, a sense of self-respect, especially for young people, but it gives direction as well, and also future prospects of how you can merge and also align yourself with the world. We've seen great sportsmen all around. We've seen that Siya Kolisi went above board despite his conditions and upbringing. There are quite a lot of others. But also, as a historian and writer myself, I've read and written more about people who were never given opportunities but still made it. Former rugby players who could not be honored with the South African colors because of their race. I've also focused quite a lot of that in my previous life, but also even in the arts sector, there's Tatu George Pemba, the visual artists, world-renowned. There's also artists from our region, the late Dr. Winston Chona and Dr. John Carney, who was also part of the festival this year, Literature Festival, who were honored, having been Tony Award winners in New York. We should live for that every day. Because it just doesn't happen. So we do have trailblazers and people whom have opened avenues and say, let South Africa be known, let Port Elizabeth now, Gqeberha be known. There is a Makanda that keeps the arts alive every year through the National Arts Festival. Come on, let the world come and see this. Let the National Arts Festival be also part of the world festivals around the world.
I love that. We just casually dropped a bomb. Like, okay, and then we're moving past it. Like, CEO of National Arts Festival is something that's really, really big. And you having held so many big roles within your long career, what does this mean for you? What does the role of being the CEO of the National Arts Festival mean? Some might say you're the custodian of the arts within South Africa. And what does it look like for your professional career?
It's an opportunity to uphold arts. Arts heals us. Our arts is therapeutic. Arts makes us complete in many ways, and our society cannot live without the arts. So that gives me a responsibility to make sure there's alignment. There's a manager that is required in me to come out and work with the systems, but also work with the world, work with the nation, and say, here we are, these are the offerings. But also there's a soul that needs to be fed. There's a soul that needs to be redirected through the many offerings that this festival gives to the world. And for me, then that means I've been given this opportunity. It's a calling that I must also preserve and do what is required. And what is required is to sustain the festival into better forms, new forms where possible, but also observe what worked and what did not work. So that is what one thinks will work best in observing and looking what else can come out of this. This is an old festival, half a century, 50 years is yeah, it's 52 in fact, plus 2. It survived a great deal. It survived during many storms in South Africa, but it always had an international flair and come all scenarios where we're looking at diversity of audiences and also the offerings and the emerging and the type of theater that is there and new voices that are coming out and progression from one stage to another, meaning that there's growth offerings and those require that we keep up with the standards. We also make sure that there's traction and interest and that you and many other young people will always come back like we have done. I grew up in the festival. I also was a festino for the longest time.
Thank you so much, Palesa. I'm definitely enjoying this conversation with you. And we're going to continue our conversation with Palesa, talking all things the future of the National Arts Festival. We'll be back after this.
Welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk. We're still in conversation with Palesa Kadi, the incoming CEO of the National Arts Festival. We're speaking all things National Arts Festival because this is Let's Talk, the NAF edition of Let's Talk. Palesa, earlier on you mentioned sustainability, which I feel like is something that we cannot leave out whenever we're having a conversation about such a legacy as huge as a National Arts Festival. Now, you yourself having grown up attending a festival and your age ngoku and you've established yourself, ukhona omnye umuntu that might say ukuba in National Arts Festival, unfortunately, the attendance over the past few years has decreased. Now, let's get into the into the future plans. What are we going to do to make sure that we keep the festival as relevant as possible?
All right. The decline in numbers also needs its own context. There was a decline from COVID. There's a post-COVID scenarios that we have seen. Gradually, everyone is getting back to normality, and baselines that we've had will not necessarily be realized without innovation. So that is where we're getting now. One will have to view, feel and understand the festival for what it is today, do explorations and also test the new innovative elements that are there. I looked at the international sphere and said, what is happening at Edinburgh? What's happening in New York? What are the offerings that are there in Ghana? Why is Rwanda continuing in this space and focusing on sports tourism instead of other elements? What can be taken from those scenarios? So it is the master plan that one needs to work on, but also view this very last and see it for what it is. I say that there are improvements I've seen. I was here last year. I was also here in the 2024 as well. So I have observed over the past 2 years at least, prior to COVID, and I've seen many international festivals as well around South Africa and the world. When I go abroad, I make sure that if it's for business, that there's a cultural agenda that I focus on. This was not for this position. I didn't know, but it is just in the person that I am to see things, view the world differently. One is just seeking an opportunity to do the assessment, being a critical thinker as well. It is required that observations are done, clarity is there, and that those who kept it going, including the public, are listened to. So that is really the mission, to hear everyone out and also receive their advice. But innovation is one of the primary offerings that one is coming with. We'll unpack it over time. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Palesa. We've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm, for one, looking very forward to the innovation that is coming with the next National Arts Festival and the future going forward. Now, Palesa reminds us that preserving culture means investing in the people who create it, and that arts heals us and is about innovation.
Kwasikakhuluma Palesa for reminding us about how great art is and the power that it has within our communities. And to you that is watching at home, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Until next time, keep talking, because silence changes nothing.
This has been Let's Talk. Good night.